All right, mate.
So your piece in New York Times was quite staggering for many of our fans. I mean, since the issues, since the initial um, forthcoming from 777, there was initial issues with Everton fans that were very concerning, given the fact that our deal or potential deal with MSP that was stalled in itself. The superb piece that you've written. Can you just tell us in general what you found in your communication, your study of what 7-7 are, and what the sort of perspective was from them in regards to looking at Everton?
It's a really interesting company, and it's kind of a hall of mirrors as well for a reporter. I hadn't heard of this company till they got involved in football, and you know, and that if it's funny, isn't it, that if that this company that has all these questions around it has
Mm,
attracted all of this attention because they've been around since 2015. But the last couple of years, they've been buying football clubs like they're going out of fashion, and not just any some of the biggest clubs in their leagues and well-known teams. And I think coming into the Premier League and coming into Everton, in particular, Everton is a big football club, you know, historic club, and yeah, results haven't been so great in recent times, but
mm,
over the course of the history, it is one of the world's I would argue most important football clubs, and passionately supported
mm.
by yourself and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
how many I wouldn't put a number at how many others. So then you're looking at this company, random company in America, and what we found is essentially it is a holding company with loads and loads and loads of business streams, so many streams. And it's not a private equity company. It's these two people, front man, very brash, loud, you know, come and look at me kind of guy,
Mm,
and Josh Wander, very flashy person. And in the background, a man his 20 years his senior, Steve Pascoe, you know, in many ways a more serious person when it comes to the finance industry, Wall Street, um, worked for Drexel, Solomon Brothers, and then what would still intrigue me how these two people have come together. Very different personalities, very different career
mm,
trajectories, and it. This is a business that started out in what is an unregulated world of structured settlements, and just to not bore anyone, this is if you had an accident or an injury, you know, you see those lawyers adverts, you know, call us and you can get this money, get compensation, and you
yeah.
do. Some people, you know, if you've been in an accident or a claim of some kind,
Mm,
you can get let's just say for argument's sake, imagine you got $1 million, and what tends to happen, you don't get that up front. It'll be on a kind of monthly basis
hmm
or weekly basis, yearly basis, whatever. So it's called an annuity that is paid out. And what these guys have said, not just them as others, and said what we would do is it's called factoring. Okay, you're owed 1 million over say 10 years. How about we give you a, a lump sum right now because you need that money right now, and we'll take that contract, and that's how they started out. So huge interest, big margin for them, great business. If you're going to give away, I don't know, 500,000, you got 1 million down the
Yeah.
road, and you collect this anyway. But in order to fund these businesses, they're themselves taking out massive loans. That's what we found. This is a business that has built its almost entire portfolio of businesses now includes aviation, insurance, litigation finance, i.e., funding people to make claims in
hmm
other cases, NFL players, and again, if they played about, you know, personal injury, things like that. Anyway, their balance sheet is from what I've seen chocked full of borrowing money at a high rate of interest in order to fund this other stuff. They are indebted up to their eyeballs from what I have seen, and that is the business model. They don't have outside investors that I have seen. Instead, they've got these companies, particularly one that's caught my eye, called ACAP, which
Yeah.
is run by a man called Kenneth King, and they have lent 777 holding company and the various businesses a huge amount of money, including the football business.
Mm.
If you're looking at this, if we look at the football businesses, what 777 have bought around the world, seven teams that are in distress, financial distress, and they, see an opportunity to get in and hope for come in when the rain is pouring, and profit when the sun is shining, and then hold them until that moment. But what they've done with all these businesses, they've sold very few, so that they have all of these kind of assets. Most of their businesses have been loss making, but they've been able to borrow against them. And here is Everton and Mashiri with I'm sure you and the Everton fans are more well versed on the problems of Everton and its
Yeah.
finances
Yeah.
right now, so you don't need to get into that. But they've struck a deal like with the others, with Mashiri, and seem to be the only game in town willing to play ball with him. And one of the things I've also sort of found in the deal itself, like if you ask a sensible person, and again, it's no disrespect to the club, it's to do
Mm.
with the finances, the debt load, the need to constantly fund the team on a weekly basis with external money. It's a car crash, really, the finances of Everton. And you'd normally have someone who'd come in and give them a quid and say, I'll take all that debt and I'll take all the
Yeah.
problems off. But these guys have said to Mashiri, we're willing to give you up to 140 million pounds in equity. Yes, it's nowhere near the amount of money he's put into this business, but it's a considerable amount. If you look at Everton balance sheet, no one else was willing to do it. And up front, they've put these loans in to keep Everton going. And if you ask me where those loans and how they've been funded, I would say most of that money has come from ACAP as well. So you've got this ACAP, which is essentially an insurance company, on the hook now for Everton and these other teams and these other businesses. It's just really really intriguing and kind of worrying that
Mm.
these are the people, and I hope I'm wrong and they're brilliant owners and they're the right people to take Everton forward.
Certainly no evidence of that, though.
There just isn't, and and that's the reality. I was talking to people in Brazil, Vasco da Gama, one of the big Rio football teams. I used to live in Rio, funny enough, for 3 or 4 years, and I know that club, passionate fan base, have had terrible owners. Or actually,
Mm.
they didn't have owners. The way Brazilian teams were structured, where they were members clubs, had terrible presidents. Only in recent years has this model changed to allow private companies to come in and kind of own the top co. And here they come.
Mm.
And part of the deal with Vasco was 777, like they're doing with Everton, is backing into ownership. So you pay a certain amount to come in and then promise to pay more down the road. And there was a payment due at Vasco, just about $20 million on the 5th of September. And that was the time for 777 to pay. They didn't pay on that day. Vasco end up with a transfer ban from FIFA because they're unable to pay the bills, i.e., transfer fees to teams they owe, and they didn't do that. They had 30 days grace from the 5th of September to the 5th of October. They finally paid a portion of that 20 million on the 5th of October. Not all of it, because still scrambling to get this money together. And then they showed them. They said, we're sending the rest, but it's a bank holiday in America. It will arrive in a few days, and eventually it did. But I would ask, if you are a business with thousands of employees, with 60 companies, this enormous kind of image that you are portraying, why are you scrambling around, rattling the
Yeah.
tin to
Mm.
get that money paid? And I heard other stories. I mean, we haven't got time for all of these, but there was the electricity company in Florida went to their offices because they were so late on the bill, they threatened to shut off the electricity. And eventually it's paid on a company credit card as the people have come in there. And I've asked them about it, and they would say, oh, it was a miscommunication was to blame for this. But I would say why are there so many of these miscommunications then, and what when it comes to paying people? One last one, a football related one, if you want. The brokers who brokered the Standard Liège deal were not paid all of their fees for a year, and only after, I believe, a threatening letter was sent with regards what's happening now with the owners and directors test, which we'll come on to, which is really important here actually. That amount was finally paid. And I think you want to talk about the owners and directors test, right?
Yeah, of course. The first thing that makes me feel quite staggered is, given the criticism and more than somewhat hatred towards Farhad Moshiri, as I'm sure you'll know about. It's staggering to think that he's the lesser of two evils, given how poor his time at Everton, regardless of how much money he's put in for players, given the situation he's in now and so many fans want him gone, to then turn to a company that is potentially going to come and invest as who many fans would see as white knights. It's really alarming, given what you've just said, that missing out on them might be ironically the better option for Everton. And that is quite staggering to be able to say that to you.
Yeah, it's because these football teams aren't companies. I know a lot of these investors and these guys, especially the American guys who aren't steeped in the game, like it's part of the fabric of people's lives, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Everyone's so emotionally invested. As I say, it's the hope that kills you, right?
Yes.
Tomorrow's going to be a better day, and we're going to get these guys in. This guy Moshiri, he actually has put a load of, he just spent it so badly and run the club so badly.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it would make a business case study as to how quickly and how badly he spent so much money to make the team worse. It's incredible.
Yeah.
What's happened there. The thing is, and this is important, it's about the regulators, what the Premier League is doing, what the FA is doing. And one thing I didn't mention, and I think that was the top of the story, which I should have probably started with here, is that this company, 777 Partners, has not got independently audited accounts for 3 years. Now, that for me is stunning, to be honest. The Financial Conduct Agency, in its requirements for not just for them, for any kind of change of ownership, requires that, and I believe they did not send them these independently audited statements more recently than 2020 because they don't have them.
Right.
When this process started in October. The other thing is the source of funds. They haven't proven those to. These are really, really big questions, and kind of alarm bells if you're looking to see what's happening. Yeah, listen, Everton are in a really bad way. Make no bones about it. Right?
Yeah.
If Fayed Moshiri doesn't put more money in, or if someone doesn't put more money into Everton, there's a definite risk of going into administration. That's for sure. What does that mean? Points deduction and almost certain relegation into the Championship, something Everton has never done, right? So there's all these historic kind of fears about the club. But I think if you put like a longer term outlook on it and think, Everton's been around for 145 years. It will take football to stop for Everton, I believe, not to be around for the next 104. Everton will be around. How bad is administration compared to where we are now, and the lack of white knights, for want of a better word, if it's only these guys or administration, right? I would argue maybe, and again, hopefully it doesn't come to this, if Everton go into administration, there will be a lot of people, I believe, sensible people, maybe people with Everton in their hearts or some interest in football, or a better caliber of investor, maybe, right? No, not to denigrate 777 here, right? Who would, at a reasonable price, be very committed to building Everton up it will be horrible and a lot of short-term pain to be relegated and playing in the championship and things like that. But if I was to say, do you want in 3, 5 years, Everton with this brand spanking new stadium back in the Premier League and not wondering, whether they can pay their heating bills and whether the new people pay their heating bills, it might be a better option, in all things considered. I know it's a horrible word, administration and relegation and all of these things, but I think football's problem often is this short-termism.
I mean, referring back to 777, I suppose everything you've said, the criticism towards them and the quite horrendous way they've ran themselves. When you look at Everton fans giving their opinion of Monsieur, it's like, I don't care, just get rid of him, get rid of Bill Kenwright, and we need somebody to come in with a clean slate and perhaps sort all of this out. They, from what you said there, Tariq, what they've done, what they currently do, how is this any of this legal for them to come into the Premier League? I know Everton have got real legal issues coming to Premier League, finances and whatnot. How is it possible for them to come and do this? And you also mentioned the boardroom side of what they do and who they have.
Well, again, it's for regulators to look at this, and there's a wider conversation about capitalism in the UK and business in the UK, and whether the regulators have enough teeth. And like I said, we're only looking at these guys because they're in football. We can imagine what else is going on. The fact if we don't we'll go to football in a minute, but if we don't give the financial regulators enough investment to have enough staff and a cohort to look at these things, they're going to probably drowning in this stuff. And then on the other hand, football's regulators, that this is happening at a time we're talking about an independent regulator for English football, and this is a great reason why there needs to be one, that has the right quality in its kind of staff, and a well-funded one, because English football, Everton included, is such an important part of our lives in this country and a great export for Britain. I would say after, or even more than the royal family here in Britain, the most popular export of, UK PLC is our football, Premier League football. It needs to be protected and cherished. I don't want to duck the question of it's legal or not legal, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't want. Of course, I almost don't want to get into those waters. What I would say though is that the people who should be protecting our football really need to take that job seriously. It's not the sexy part, you see, governance. It's a really boring word. People fall asleep. You'd rather be talking about new sponsorship deals, TV contracts, league watched in however, billion households. But this boring part needs to be really rock solid to protect the league, and to protect the future of football in this country.
In your opinion, the way you see this potentially going forward, I know the deal's been stalled now and it's unlikely to happen. Hopefully unlikely to happen, given what you've said.
I don't know if it'll be unlikely to happen.
Well, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
it just depends. It depends how what this regulation process looks like, and what the stakes are here is what's the lesser of two evils, maybe, and all sorts of other things. And who knows, maybe they put a statement out since we published our story to say they think the process is ongoing and they've provided all of the necessary paperwork. I don't know how they can say that given this requirement for independently audited statements.
What is behind the ambition to come and get Everton? Because, like we explained earlier, given the financial issues that the club has got in itself, given the stadium, which still needs certain amounts of funding to get completed, what is in their minds of coming and get Everton? Is it the fact that it'd probably be a lot cheaper than it potentially would be for another Premier League football club? From what you've said in the other clubs that you've studied yourself and been around, certainly in Brazil, you've got in Belgium as well. I've read that there's been protests of fans about these guys and things like that. What is the thing that appeals to them from Everton? Is it just simply the case that you get them cheaper?
It's not that cheap either. If you look at
Well, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
they can get them, to be honest, they're in distress. There is a common theme, like of all of these teams, that they're all such basket cases financially.
Yeah.
There's no they can get them. They can get them. Is the point? Like, you know, I've spoken to people within that business as well. People confidentially
Yeah, of course.
over, you know, a couple of weeks of reporting, and they don't see it as a good deal for them. But you know, if you take away the finances, what they're building is this constellation of teams, and they've got this idea, like all these multi-club owners, that, you know, we will by being bigger and together, the whole is more valuable than the pieces, and that is a big asset, and maybe they can leverage more loans against that money. I mean, this, to me, this business looks like there's just one loan pays for
For the other.
another
Yeah.
company, then you get another loan against that company and that asset, and it just kind of, the kind of contagion risk for me is within just their business feels quite high. And again, it's for them, you know, if you ask them, they think they've got a very healthy business, and you know that's what they'll say. But let me just say, taking them and Everton out, this idea of multi-club ownership that we are seeing across football at the moment, everyone talks about synergies and all these kind of buzzwords around how, you know, it's going to be growth and you know, glory days, and this is how football will be in the future. But the thing, when you have multi clubs, and I talked about the Vasco example, where they've got a FIFA suspension because they didn't pay transfer fees owed to clubs. Now imagine the contagion risk just within football. If you own 8 teams and you fail, that's 8 teams that are in serious trouble. They've already got financial issues, all of these 8. That's where they've come in. Now imagine how many other teams are exposed to the financial problems of each of those 8 teams. This is like a major risk to the football industry if these MCOs, multi-club ownership models, are allowed to get really big and fail. And no one is paying attention, or at least looking to regulate any of this. And that's my kind of fear about this. Whenever we talk about football, we talk about new owners coming in, growth and money and all of these things. We don't talk about risk. We don't talk about cost. I know it just sounds a bit boring and unsexy. You'd rather talk about who we're buying, spend some money, all these things. But like all of these, you know, this industry, it's so important to so many people. It just needs to be kind of be on more solid footing.
Just one final question, because I know you've got to move on. Each of those clubs that you refer to that they've invested in or have part of or are very much involved with, how, and I don't want you to come up with every single one of them that you've studied, but how has that come to pass? Is it simply given the ownership of those clubs and the crisis they've been in, i.e. like Everton we talk about? Has there been other various reasons as to why and how they've come about in each of those clubs?
Well, it's just like I said, they were all screwed, and that's why they're in there. And so they're kind of different. They're all slightly different. Sevilla's separate. Sevilla, they own a minority stake, and it's a disputed stake. And there's a load of issues within the football club at Sevilla, and the others, they are kind of pennies on the pound deals as well, but will be a big problem down the road. So Hertha Berlin, in the beginning, they got control of Hertha Berlin for about $15 million, converting a loan, as you might have seen with Everton, they've loaned Everton money, and that will go down as equity. Converting these small amounts of money into ownership stakes of these clubs. But the problem is, and we're seeing it, is they have to keep funding them, and they sometimes miss payments to the people they owe the money to. And, you know, the only commonality just to draw a line under this, these are all kind of distressed clubs and hopeless from the financial point of view, where there aren't other people willing to do what these guys are doing. And you know, again, I hope I'm completely wrong, by the way. Let me just finish with this. I hope they're brilliant. I hope they come in, and I hope Everton finally gets to be the club it should be after these years. And you thought that would be the case with Moshiri and the amount he spent, and you know, there's a whole other program about Usmanov and the links to that. But you know, fingers crossed. I'm completely wrong.
Let's hope so, Tariq. And thanks so much for taking your time to have a chat with us. I'd implore anybody to go and read the piece you've done with the New York Times. And hopefully we're speaking again in a much more positive way.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for joining me, mate. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. All the best.
You too, mate. Speak to you soon.
All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.